Quote.ie can save you money on your car insurance, van insurance or home insurance. Quote Devil Home Insurance is so easy. Get a quote in just 60 seconds and purchase cover in 3 minutes.
The Quote Devil's always got one hell of a quote.
Quote Devil Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Now, welcome back. So we're very busy this afternoon, lots going on. Ian McKinley is going to join us just after 3 o'clock. Dublin-born, Italian international. He's returned home, hasn't officially retired. He's still only 30 years of age, but he's coaching in the AIL. As I'm sure you know, he overcame losing sight in his left eye to play international rugby with Italy. So be good to catch up with Ian McKinley just after 3. We'll have Gary Murphy on the BMW Championship over in the States, where father-to-be Rory McIlroy is back in contention on a Sunday. At 4 o'clock, myself, Shay Given and Packy Bonner in conversation. From 5, we have Ellen Keane talking with journalist Joanna Reardon and ultra runner Conor O'Keefe. And then at 6, Andy Lee in his Andy Lee Meet series is talking to Cora Staunton. Updates as well today on Munster Connacht at the Aviva and day 2 of the Tour de France. But we are, in the meantime, looking to review the Sunday papers. We have Tommy Conlon with us from the Sunday Independent and Conor McKeon as well, who covers GAA for the Independent. Gents, you're very welcome. How you doing?
Good, Joe. Good, Joe. You better speak up there. I can hardly hear you.
I'll shout just for you, Tommy. Okay, here we go. I'll start with the headlines.
Good man, Joe.
So the Sunday Mirror, we have a picture of Messi and Guardiola on the back page. Get in Messi and Pep stays. City will pull off dazzling double by signing superstar. The clear implication being, if you sign Messi, Pep will absolutely stay. Mail on Sunday, Pierre effect. This is Aubameyang. Arsenal's hero is Mikel Arteta's confident Gunners lay down marker for season with penalty shootout victory over Liverpool yesterday. That is the back page lead on the Mail on Sunday. Sunday Times, they have a picture of Aubameyang as well celebrating, and also Lewis Hamilton celebrating as well. Aubameyang and Hamilton honoured the dead star of Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman, who passed away very sadly. Tribute acts is the headline, and the pictures are there. Hendrick McAteer wrong over Kenny. That is Jeff talking about Jason. We also have Sun Sport, picture of Aubameyang. It's back, holding the Community Shield, but they're not. And they are Harry Maguire and Pep Guardiola. So Harry Maguire has been given an extended break by Manchester United following his Greek nightmare, say the Sun. And Pep is isolating. He was over in Spain, so he's flown back to the UK. He's isolating for the next 14 days. The Star, double trouble. This is City closing in on Messi, very much the feeling over in the UK press, closing in on Messi and Pep deal. So Pep is going to sign a new deal at City. But the trouble part is that other clubs and UEFA are going to look at the figures, given the financial fair play situation and Manchester City's checkered history of late. It remains to be seen, can they pull off that deal. Klopp's shield of screams is the Sunday World lead. Pool boss admits his side need to find their shooting boots fast after getting gunned down by Arsenal. And then the Sunday Independent, Leinster show no mercy. Picture of Rory O'Loughlin celebrating after Ed Byrne scored one of the tries yesterday. 28 points to 10 at the Aviva Stadium. Taste of what might have been for returning Madigan as crazy Ulster errors open the door for Cullen's ruthless side. And then beneath that, Arteta repeats the trick with tried and tested. Tommy Conlon, we might start with your piece on page 10 of the Sunday Independent. There's loads to get through in the papers today, lots of good stuff today. Emotional and chaotic times spark sporting activists is the headline. You're reflecting on an amazing week in US sports, Tommy. You finish up by saying, it's a long haul, the work of many lifetimes. Nothing permanent gets done in a few days, but last week, the new generation of socially conscious sportsmen and women proved that they are leaving their own footprints in the sand too. Your thoughts on the last week, Tommy?
Yeah, I was watching the unfolding story on CNN on Wednesday evening. That and of course it was headline news. An NBA team was refusing point blank to play a game. And not just any old game, but a playoff game in the series that all teams are aspiring to win and get to the NBA Finals. And essentially, the Milwaukee Bucks had stayed in their locker room, and the Orlando Magic players were actually out on the court warming up when eventually word filtered out that there was going to be no game. And this was all taking place in Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, where the NBA took the whole machine, the whole organization, they took basically every team that was qualified to play the latter stages of the regular league and on into the last 16 and on to the best of 7 games, the whole thing. They moved the whole kit and caboodle down to Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, set up the biosecure bubble, a term that we've become used to in the last few months. And anyway, and the NBA, the season had stopped in March because of the pandemic and resumed on July the 30th with the plans to play the NBA finals the first 2 weeks in October. And apparently it was working very well. All the teams were there. The numerous hotel bedrooms, of course, down in that enormous facility at Disney World Orlando, and of course the biosecure bubble was there to keep out the virus. But as it turned out, what penetrated the bubble was the shooting of Jacob Blake, father of 6, last Sunday in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And of course, this happened 3 months after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, who was being, we will recall, was being taken into custody by police in Minneapolis, ended up dead on the street. And that harrowing footage was filmed on mobile phones, uploaded to social media. It caused convulsions across America. Fast forward 3 months, and again, the shooting of a black man by a white police officer, this time not fatally, but the man has been paralyzed. And this happened last Sunday in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And again, it was filmed, and again, it went around the world. Yeah. And apart from anything else, just maybe a brief digression into this contemporary situation we have, whereby citizens around the world are now witnessing, can see human beings being shot, be it in not necessarily always in situations of police forces and citizens in America, but I personally find that whole scenario that we have one of the, I guess, products of the globalized world, the connected world, is that we're seeing scenes of violence and death being filmed and uploaded for the world to see. And I find something about that troubling, and just not really sure where we're going with all of that. But the specific effects in terms of American sport was that, of course, with the George Floyd incident still fresh in everyone's minds, the players, and 80% of NBA players are either black or minority ethnic. And of course, they also saw those scenes from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Milwaukee is only 40 miles from Kenosha. It is in the state of Wisconsin. And the Milwaukee Bucks decided on Wednesday, suddenly it seems, not without any great forethought or planning, LeBron James on the Monday, the LA Lakers had played their game on the Monday, and LeBron James was quoted afterwards as saying, "Why does it always have to get a point where we see the guns firing?" asked James after the LA Lakers played on Monday night. "For black people right now, we think you're hunting us." And then on the next day, there was a very powerful quotes from the head coach of the LA Clippers, Doc Rivers. And Doc Rivers said, he referred to the Republican Party National Convention that was also running simultaneously in America last week, and at which, of course, Donald Trump was formally ratified as the party's candidate for the presidential elections in November. So Doc Rivers on the Tuesday says, he says, all you hear them, and he's referring to speakers at the Republican Party National Convention, all you hear them talking about is fear. We're the ones getting killed. We're the ones getting shot. It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country and this country does not love us back. That was on the Tuesday, and on the Wednesday then, the Milwaukee Bucks refused to come out and play against the Orlando Magic in what was an unprecedented situation for the NBA.
And as you write, it prompted a domino effect. We saw it in baseball, we saw it in Major League Soccer, we saw it in women's NBA, we saw Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, withdraw from the Western and Southern Open. And the United States Television Association followed suit and called off play on Thursday. So it was an extraordinary moment. There haven't been many like it in sports or US sports. I got the distinct impression from your piece, Tommy, that you were full of admiration for the players who took the stand.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in a way, it's far too complex for someone who hasn't grown up in the American society and who lives 3,000 miles away. In many ways, albeit yes, of course, I'm sympathetic to it. I do have a sense that I'm not really qualified to pronounce on it with any great emotional impact one way or another. I'm very conscious of that, but also from someone as a sports writer and someone who's very interested in sports history. I've studied and read and watched a lot of documentaries on the history of Black America and sport. Say from Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion in the 1910s. There was a great documentary about Jack Johnson some years ago called Unforgivable Blackness. And the story of Jack Johnson, Jesse Owens, Joe Louis, Jackie Robinson, John Carlos and Tommy Smith at Mexico 68, Muhammad Ali, Arthur Ashe, and then take it into the contemporary times with Colin Kaepernick and LeBron James. And there is a century of history there, a century whereby sport has become a sort of an engine for protest, an engine for some sort of where actually sportsmen who traditionally across the world, sportsmen are apolitical. Sports people are apolitical and tend not to be engaged in society, but circumstances have forced those choices and forced those obligations on 100 years of African American athletes and sportsmen. So in that context, I was very interested in this latest. This is the latest actually manifestation of something that's actually been going on for many, many decades.
Conor, I would fully suspect we're going to see more of this now and in the short term, regardless of how November's election result goes. George Floyd, it was such a huge story and the reaction was so massive. The fact that it didn't give the police officer involved in the Jacob Blake situation pause for thought, that an unarmed man was shot 7 times in the back and has been left paralysed. It's miraculous he's not dead. But the fact that that happened so quickly on the back of the George Floyd situation would suggest we're going to see more incidents in the short term again, and they'll most likely be videoed and uploaded very, very quickly again. So as for what precedent this has set, I don't know. I mean, will we now routinely see games postponed and called off over the next couple of years in American sports? I think that's very possible.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to say is that it's almost a shame that the extent to which the Milwaukee Bucks went to, the gravitas of their stand is almost sort of diluted a small bit because of the bizarre circumstances in which that game was being played. Had it been played in a full arena in normal circumstances pre-COVID, I think not fulfilling the fixture would have had an even greater resonance globally. But because sport is played in such very odd circumstances at the moment, this was like just another mad thing to happen, along the lines of the two main narratives, global narratives at the moment, over racism and over COVID. But it is incredible that we're seeing such, I suppose, politically motivated athletes now, and what it is that prompted that. Because, it's not too long ago that we were all talking about the dance and Michael Jordan and his famous quote about Republicans buy sneakers too. And it's not too long ago that when Tiger Woods was in his pomp and the most recognisable athlete and one of the most famous people in the world, that he never really stood up and made his voice heard on that subject. So, is it a case that things have gotten worse in America, or is it a case that, as Tommy points out, people videotape these incidents, they become news and global news much quicker after they happen? That would be an interesting study if anybody undertook it. But I think, while there's somebody in the White House, and I don't want to get too political on it, who seems to be so passive about condemning this kind of behaviour, I think we'll see more and more sporting protests. And I was reading Barney Renee write about it during the week in The Guardian as well, and he was kind of saying, well, what would happen if this happened in the Premier League game? And I think for a lot of people, sport is their kind of connection to normality. I know a lot of people who started to fully appreciate the seriousness of the COVID pandemic when sports events started to be cancelled, because for a lot of people, they are the kind of they are the beats and the rhythm of life. And particularly in America, where their sports, particularly their big sports, the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, they're so tied up in a kind of a national identity. And I think, the American institutions kind of used them as well to piggyback on them for that, bloated nationalism, the Star-Spangled Banner and the military parades before the Super Bowl with the fighter jets in the sky. I think if those big institutions and games start to go down, and they more regularly become used as a platform for people to make these kind of protests, I think we'll see change an awful lot quicker. So, the power of this protest is huge, and the potential for sport to be used in this way, I think, is even bigger again.
Well, there's so few platforms have that reach. I wasn't fully aware, I must be honest, of what was happening to the Uyghur community in China until Mesut Ozil stood up about it. You don't see it on the RTE News at 6 o'clock when you're watching. It doesn't seem to be covered in ways that sports people can suddenly shine a massive light on. And it's funny, you mentioned the golf, Tommy. The PGA Tour continued, and Conor mentioned Tiger Woods there. If Tiger was in his early 20s maybe and still grappling with his newfound status, or maybe felt unequipped to say anything about what's going on, you would absolutely forgive him. And I wouldn't necessarily even castigate him now. But the fact is, Tiger's in his mid-40s. We're just not going to see it from Woods. And it would be such a moment if he, in his sport, was to take a stand. I did think to myself, what an amazing moment it would be if Woods, for instance, was called to the first tee on Thursday at the BMW Championship in Chicago and stood there or took a knee and then refused to participate. It would just send a message to the White House as much as anything. And that doesn't seem to be in Tiger's wheelhouse. He's just not going there, never will. I mean, if he's not doing it in his mid-40s at a moment like this, when he's had time right through Wednesday to see what was happening in the NBA and other sports, it was in terms of a timeline, enough there for him to digest what was going on, and still he didn't. I don't think we'll ever see it from Woods.
Yeah, it was interesting because later on Wednesday, or simultaneously, but on Wednesday then, Sky Sports were covering the boycott or the walkout by the Milwaukee Bucks in Orlando, and then in the same news bulletin, maybe a few minutes later, then they went to the golf, and there's Tiger doing his normal press conference, sitting up at the top table talking about his golf game and how he needs to get his whatever mechanics of his game sorted, and the conjunction of the two, these athletes down in Florida actually taking this major stand about a societal issue, and there's Tiger then talking about his golf game and the golf course and how it was it's a golf course that's as tough as any major, and the juxtaposition of the two meant it actually came. Tiger, I was looking and thinking, Tiger, you have never been more irrelevant. You have never looked so much like yesterday's man as you do right now, talking about that stuff, And you make a fair point, Joe. It's not really, he doesn't have to do it if he doesn't want to. And indeed, Dr. Harry Edwards, the famous African-American academic and indeed activist in the 1960s, who, as you know, was instrumental in planning the famous Black Power salute with John Carlos and Tommy Smith. And Dr. Edwards spoke in Croke Park a couple of years ago at their annual summer school, and I was at that, and I asked him about Tiger Woods. And actually, Harry Edwards was, he was very nonchalant about it. He showed no resentment or anything. He was just philosophical about it. More or less said, if Tiger doesn't want to do it, then he doesn't want to do it. And that's, I guess, fair enough, but he massively disappointed in one way, and also a sense that, you know, time has passed him by, really, in terms of that whole, in terms of apparently his obliviousness to his own, to the tradition whence he comes. I mean, 4 years, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, LeBron James spoke at the annual, at the ESPY Awards, is it?
Yeah.
ESPY Awards, and they invoked, and they said they invoked Ali and Jackie Robinson, and they said, we stand in that tradition, we are part of that tradition, we have to honour that, we have a duty to honour that tradition. And Tiger apparently, no, it never seemed to interest him.
No, it never did. And Conor, I would definitely withdraw from castigating anyone too much in that regard. They're a private citizen. They may feel unequipped to do it. But it is just so striking when you have Woods, who, like I said, is in his mid-40s, will remember the Rodney King riots, is not just suddenly on the scene here and trying to grapple with what's going on or to dig back, you know, feels the need to dig back through history. He has seen the issue of police brutality going back decades. He's taken the Medal of Freedom from the Donald in the White House. It is just so striking when the greatest golfer probably in history, and certainly the most powerful voice in the most country club and whitest of sports, is African Asian and says nothing. You know, I don't suspect, I know you're a golf fan and you would have followed Woods for a long time and probably read a lot about Woods. I don't suspect we're ever going to see it from him, but geez, I'd love to know what he's thinking. I mean, penny for his thoughts here. Is he grappling with it on Thursday morning? I'm not sure. I feel like he must be on some level.
I don't think he is. I think, no, I mean, I think both of us, and maybe Tommy as well, and a lot of people have read Tiger's backstory, and it's the story of a very, very sort of a strangely brought up human being, you know, who was brought up to believe that he would be the sporting messiah and the most recognisable sports person in the world and the greatest golfer of all time. And it's a story of somebody who was sort of led to believe that all the people that they encountered along the way were to be used and discarded for their worth, you know, in pursuing that goal. And I'm not sure that having a wider social conscience was ever really in the playbook. You sort of hoped all along with Tiger that the more he grew out of his father's shadow, because there was no doubt that Earl Woods cast a very long shadow over Tiger and everything he did, and particularly after everything that he went through, you know, all the very self-inflicted controversy and the hardship and everything else that he went through, that he would have an epiphany someday, you know, that he would, you know, wake up and see that there's a world outside kind of Planet Tiger. Yeah. And I know that narrative was being pursued very vigorously.
It does seem his general demeanour has changed and improved.
And you know, and you read a lot about that. People, you know, golf writers say, but like, you know, what does that mean? That just means that he's more inclined to tell you that he hit a 5-iron instead of a 6-iron, or you know, you know, he's more affable. He's less narky, really, in public. That's really, you know, the bones of that. But having a social conscience is another thing entirely. And like, let's face it, major sporting bodies don't take well to their athletes mounting political stands. And I would imagine, and, you know, excuse me if I'm wrong here, that major sporting manufacturers, you know, the sort of sponsors that people like Tiger Woods have on board, it's not particularly good for business. Going back to the Michael Jordan quote
But
as well.
I don't think that's true in Woods' case anymore. I don't even think you're sacrificing much. I mean, the Colin Kaepernick Nike thing is, it's a huge deal. I mean, it's not you're not Ali giving up your career here. Is the other thing. I'm being told if we go to a quick ad break, we'll park the American stuff there. Tommy Conlon writing about it on page 10 of the Sunday Independent. Short break, and then we're back with the lads. Loads to get through.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball. The Hard Shoulder with Kieran Cuddihy. Weekdays from 4 on News Talk.
From the apartment in the city to the cottage in the country, at Energia, we're the power behind 250,000 customers across Ireland. And right now, there's never been a better time to join us and save on your electricity and gas with our cheapest dual fuel bundle. Wherever you're living, know you always get the biggest savings by coming direct to us. Go direct to energia.ie and switch today. Energia, the power behind your savings. EAB €1,364 based on average annual usage. 12-month contract, discounted unit rates, standing charge, PSO levy and carbon tax, T's and C's and early termination fee apply. Valid from June 2020 and subject to change. Verification and T's and C's at energia.ie/EAB.
Afternoons are easy with insuremyvan.ie, Ireland's low-cost van insurance specialist. Get your business back on the road with Insure My Van's best price guarantee. For super savings, visit insuremyvan.ie. City Financial Marketing Group Limited, trading as insuremyvan.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Learn today, lead tomorrow at AIT. Athlone Institute of Technology has a flexible part-time programme for you in business, law, engineering, IT, culinary arts, science, quality and many more. Flexible payment options available, in addition to many free and part-funded Springboard Plus places. Join us at our virtual online open evening on Tuesday, 8th of September from 5:30pm to 8:30pm. For more details, see AITflexibleLearning.ie or AIT.ie.
Springboard Plus is co-funded by the Government of Ireland and the European Social Fund as part of the ESF Programme for Employability, Inclusion and Learning 2014 to 2020.
Kickstart your morning with Nespresso coffee machines at great prices from Harvey Norman. Like the Nespresso Virtuo Next coffee machine, now just €99, saving €69. Or get the Nespresso Virtuo Next coffee machine with Aerochino, now only €169. And for a limited time only, claim 50 free Nespresso coffee capsules plus a free coffee subscription when you purchase any Nespresso Virtuo coffee machine from Harvey Norman. Shop online today or safely in our spacious stores. Harvey Norman, your home appliance specialists.
Go!
Into sports.
20 yards out, Ursh to shoot, don't shoot! Oh, what a goal from Fabinho! Wow!
Then get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to him, yeah. No.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch, what are you going to get a slap?
Plus, exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports. Ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download it now.
Sharon Niviolan here. National Hospice fundraising efforts have been severely affected by COVID-19. Please support your local hospice by hosting a socially distanced or virtual coffee morning for Hospice Coffee Morning Together with Bewley's on Thursday, 24th of September. Visit hospicecoffeemorning.ie or call 1890 998 995.
Check this out. SuperValu are cutting their prices again. SuperValu fresh Irish whole chicken 1.9 kg was $5.69, now $4.75. SuperValu organic carrot 750 gram was $1.59, now 99 cent. Check out SuperValu's fresh price cuts for yourself. It's got to be SuperValu.
On 106 to 108 FM, on newstalk.com, on smart speaker, and on the Newstalk app. This is Newstalk.
It's 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. Gardaí are investigating the unexplained death of a man in his 20s in Kerry last night. The man's body was found outside a hotel in Killarney at around 11:40pm. Ben Finnegan reports.
The man in his 20s was found outside the Gleneagle Hotel on Muckross Road in Killarney late last night and was pronounced dead a short time later. His body has been removed from the scene and taken to University Hospital Kerry for a post-mortem to take place. Gardaí say the results of the post-mortem will determine the course of the investigation. Meanwhile, the scene outside the hotel remains preserved for a technical examination to take place. Anyone who was in the area last night between 11 o'clock and 11:45 are being asked to contact Gardaí in Killarney.
Sinn Féin says the government's replacement for the temporary wage subsidy scheme could lead to thousands of job losses. The employment wage subsidy scheme is set to come into effect from Tuesday and run until March next year. It'll see a worker's maximum subsidy drop from €410 per week to €203. People earning under €151 won't be eligible. Sinn Féin's finance spokesperson Piers Doherty says that's unacceptable.
Can't wash their hands from this here. There was commitments given that they wouldn't withdraw the supports until stage 4 of the reopening of the economy, till everybody was allowed up and running. That isn't the case.
An infectious disease expert's asking if NPHET's structure could be changed to improve our response to COVID-19. Dr. Jack Lambert says a review should take place. His comments come amid a steady increase in cases over the past 2 months. Dr. Lambert says a new approach might need to be considered.
I think NPHET's done a great job in certain things, but I think if you look at the structure, this organisation was set up before COVID came along. The UK recognised that their Public Health England structure was not working for COVID. They scrapped it and they're putting together a new system. I'm just saying, maybe we need to think about the same thing.
And an elderly man has died following a single vehicle crash in County Kildare. It happened at around 7:30 yesterday evening at Lattensbog, Adamstown. The man, who was in his 70s, was taken to Naas General Hospital but was later pronounced dead. The road's currently closed for a technical examination and Gardaí are appealing for witnesses to contact them. It's 2 minutes past 2.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to the AA. For great value home insurance, go online to the aa.ie.
Mainly dry today with sunny spells and just a few isolated showers. Maximum temperatures of 15 to 17 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Welcome back. We're going through the Sunday papers. We have Tommy Conlon and Conor McKeon with us. Right, there's lots to get through, so we'll pick up the pace. We have Dennis Walsh on golf post the Oireachtas gathering. We have Stephen Kenny coverage. We have the GAA split season. Paul Kimmage is writing about the Tour de France. Will he dare to love again? We have Messi coverage. We have Serena Williams and her bid to equal Margaret Court's record. Joe Brolly is writing about his dismissal at RTE and Declan McBennett. We have Peter O'Reilly on declining Limerick presence in Munster rugby, and Stephen Jones on trans rugby players as well has written a very interesting piece. So we'll try and get through as much as we can. There is a text in from Tom, fellas. To what extent do you think Tiger's personal scandal impacts his willingness to get involved? It is an interesting question. I have wondered that. Maybe he doesn't feel in a position to be moralising to the world, but I don't think it's the defining decision. Conor, on the golf thing then, and we'll leave it after this, but Dennis Walsh is writing on page 17 of the Sunday Times. I think it's actually a very interesting piece. Do not forget how golf has crossed class boundaries. He says, despite the headlines, sport has done plenty, the sport of golf has done plenty to shake off its image for being just for the elite. And effectively, he picks up with Pat Ruddy, the celebrated golf writer and course designer, who reckons only 2 golf courses in Connacht for a long time had clubhouses made of stone. The rest conducted their business from some kind of multitasking hut, and talks about how on most courses the greens were ringed with wire to keep livestock at bay. And Dennis Walsh writes that Ruddy didn't really encounter golf's class system until he went to Dublin as a young writer in the 1960s. In the cities especially, golf was seen as a game for the professional classes, elements of the clergy, much like rugby. And many of the best clubs were exclusive establishments. 1970s, I hadn't realised this under pressure really from people who weren't members of clubs, that the Office of Public Works with the GUI and the Dublin County Council, they got together and built a 9-hole public course, that's step aside. And over the last 50 years, public courses and other pay-for-play facilities have mushroomed all over the country. Anybody who wants a game of golf now can have it for a reasonable rate in a relaxed environment. Says the number of members' courses has doubled from about 200 in the 50s to about 400 now. So he says, when the appalling behaviour of the Oireachtas Golf Society was exposed, golf itself was fingered as a witless accomplice. Those who had no feelings for the game except disdain channeled their inner Billy Bragg and rolled out the old tropes. In this case, it wasn't without foundation. He talks about the political elite showing flagrant disregard. But he does say that the bigger picture for golf is far more wholesome. I'm sure you noticed, Conor, I know you're a golfer, the old tropes coming out about golf. A game for the elite not a game of the people, that's for sure. That's generally what we're hearing. In Ireland, I'm not so sure that is a fair accusation.
No, it's not a fair accusation at all. I think that the most recent figures published by the GUI is that there are 150,000 members, GUI members, and there's 425 affiliated golf clubs. Now, I saw some sort of informed speculation that since the COVID lockdown had happened, there were somewhere around 15,000 new members of golf clubs since then. And Dennis makes a point in his piece that since the COVID lockdown, people who were suddenly working from home or on furlough had time on their hands, and those for whom Gaelic Games is their first passion had no inter-county scene to follow and didn't have unrestricted access to club games. Golf filled some of that void. And the tropes were rolled out, and they're very easy tropes for people to kind of pick on when a situation arises like it did with the Oireachtas Golf Society at the weekend. But, if you think of the number of pubs that are around that have golf societies, and you think of the number of golf courses that just are around, there aren't enough elitist, snooty, snobby people to fill those golf courses. And at the moment, I think they're more filled than they're ever before. And again, like Dennis finishes the piece, the behaviour of the Oireachtas Golf Society was violently at odds with all of that. That distinction must be recognised, because there's an awful lot that goes on, and for even for Irish golfers, this summer has been the best summer of all time, because a lot of the big Irish golf clubs that might have been out of their price bracket had to lower their rates because they didn't have tourists to pay those higher rates. So it's a more inclusive sport this year than I think it ever was before. And I think its characterisation, which was probably had been diminished about it being an elite sport, the Oireachtas Golf Society couldn't have organised their annual bash at the worst possible time.
No, it's true. Tommy, I do think in the UK it's definitely more elitist. I think Kenny Dalglish can't get into Birkdale even. It's a footballer at Birkdale kind of a situation. And in the US with the country clubs, it's very, very elite. I don't think that's quite true here to the same extent. A few very notable exceptions, obviously, notwithstanding.
I wonder, is Ireland too small to have a very rigid class-bound structures? Upper middle and lower middle. And I just wonder, is the population too small to actually sustain those totally obvious and separated tiers of society? And, sort of, especially outside of Dublin anyway, and whatever about Cork or Galway, I don't know, did the demographics or just the nature of Irish society kind of prohibit the rigid class society? Although lots of sociologists and historians would tell you that Ireland has its class structures as well, but maybe not as pronounced as the UK or America. And it's such an intimate society, Ireland, that, and people are living cheek by jowl. And but Dennis's piece is, apart from being very well written as usual, and I love that line that you quoted about Billy Bragg. It's also actually a little capsule, sort of reflection of how golf changed as society changed. And Pat Ruddy only really discovered the class system when he went to Dublin, maybe a city big enough to sustain a class system, and back then was still sort of had that Victorian relics of that class society thing going on, and sport, I suppose, it opens up that idea of sport as a metaphor for society, as a metaphor for class in society, with soccer seen as the game of the urban poor, the urban working class, and rugby at the other end of the spectrum, and all of that. And I guess the more than the issues of race in America, class is reflected in sporting structures and sports as well. And I thought it was very interesting. Pat Ruddy. Have you ever interviewed him, Joe?
No, I mean his name comes up all the time.
he seems a guy who's a deep knowledge of the history of golf and that, and it's very interesting. It's social history, what Dennis has captured here with Pat Ruddy, who I was fascinated to see also started the Homeless Golfers Society. He established this for those who were desperate for a game but couldn't gain entry to a club, and there's actually a lot. It's a small piece, and I no photograph, so it's buried a little bit, but actually well worth reading because there's a lot in it, not just about the current attitudes towards golf, but the evolution of golf and hand in hand with the evolution of our social system, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. I wouldn't have known it was in the 70s that the GUI got together and said we need to build a public course, and that's how Stepaside came into being. I wouldn't have known that at all. I would agree with you on class feeling less pronounced here than it does in the UK. That's just an anecdotal feeling you get anytime you spend time in the two countries. Long may it continue. On football then, so very soon Stephen Kenny at last is going to have his first Irish game. There's lots of coverage. Adventurous soul steps into the unknown, for instance, Eamon Sweeney in the Sunday Independent, and I know you picked out Philip Quinn in the Mail, Tommy. We're all very excited to see what Stephen Kenny brings to the party. Adventurous soul, as Eamon Sweeney writes of him. And he says that a lack of success is not the worst thing that could happen to Kenny. The real disappointment would be if he abandons his principles and the realities of international football, force him into admitting that the pragmatists were right all along. Should that happen, he'll join Guinness Light, the Irish Labour Party and the Laser Show after the U2 concert in 1985 on the list of great national letdowns. I don't think that will happen, he says. And I don't think that will happen with Stephen Kenny. It all begins on Thursday night against Bulgaria, Tommy.
Yeah, and I mentioned Paul Rowan as very good coverage as well in the Sunday Times.
Yes.
On Kenny and the Bulgaria game, and indeed on the FEI EGM tomorrow and all like that. You said there, Joe, people are very excited to see how he'll do, and I'm wondering if they are. I mean, outside of football, Irish football's demographic, which is a big one, obviously, but I don't think he has at all penetrated into the national consciousness, the public consciousness. That will take time and success more than anything. It will take success, and I'm not making the comparison in any way. But when we saw the Jack Charlton, poor old Jack, died, and the national outpouring, that was a reminder of how much the game again, or the prominence of the Irish national football team, which is, you could say, the country's flagship team.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. And even, in so much as you can judge things, whatever we talk about, the highest text and tweet response will always be after an Ireland match. Yeah.
It is the country's flagship team, even allowing for how well the national rugby team has done over the last decade and more, and indeed Munster and Leinster. It is the one, and it is important to us how it does. And but in terms of profile, right now it has shrunken back down. I think a lot to its towards its natural demographic, and Stephen Kenny has the monumental job of building up that whole sort of building up that profile again and bringing it back into the public consciousness. And I wonder how many people are actually aware that these Nation Leagues games are happening this week, or for example, today is the first day of Stephen Kenny's reign in charge in terms of taking charge of the team. And his first international game on Thursday against Bulgaria, and then against Finland on Sunday, I think. And I don't know, Conor, what do you think? There seems to be, at the moment, a fair amount of indifference.
Yeah, I'd say there probably is, just because people have become growingly indifferent about the Irish international team. But that's because, Giovanni Trapattoni was appointed manager in 2008, and Ireland have been effectively unwatchable since then, and that's a big part of it. And I think a lot of people, there's excitement on a couple of levels. I think, when you talk to people about this, the first is that Stephen Kenny is going to make Ireland watchable again. He's going to turn them into a modern football team that likes to have possession of the ball and tries to use it in a productive way. And the second thing is that, you know, he's not a manager from, you know, a yellow pack manager from like, you know, the middle shelf of international managers that we can afford. Okay, he hasn't cut his teeth abroad, and there seems to be mixed opinion over whether he'd be able to command the dressing room. But, you know, like, he learned his trade here. Like, there's a familiarity, I think, with Stephen Kenny that is a different sort of familiarity that greeted when Martin O'Neill and Mick McCarthy were both appointed, because it is a very low threshold. But I think for a lot of people, they would just like the Ireland international team to be watchable again. You know, like, because it used to be one of the great thrills. You just get half days from school. You know, you could identify with all the players. Okay, the players don't have the same profiles here because they don't play for clubs of the stature that they used to. But like, the promise that he's actually going to, you know, play in such a way that will make the team watchable again, that won't kind of infuriate you every time they have possession. I think there is a buzz about that. And I think Philip's right to say that if that doesn't happen and the thing becomes a flop, it will be a huge letdown.
Well, Philip Quinn talks to Niall Quinn on the back of the Jason McAteer quotes, and Quinn says what Stephen's done in the game won't matter an SH1T after his first session. So Quinn dismisses the McAteer concerns. Eamon Sweeney, who's a big League of Ireland fan, says this is a gamble. Even a fervent Kenny supporter like myself can see that. Maybe his record with Dundalk and the under-21 team won't translate to international senior management. Maybe the players won't buy into the vision. Maybe the timid apostles of conservatism will be proved right, which is, of course, possible. The interesting point, though, Conor, is when you mentioned the halcyon days and Jack, we weren't very watchable then. We were just successful. And we probably won't be ever as successful as that again. Who knows? I hope I'm wrong. It was a golden generation, you feel, in retrospect. We're actually entering potentially an interesting new scenario whereby we might be very watchable and still not that successful. So under Jack, very successful, not that watchable. Under Mick, you would say very successful by the standards where we are today, World Cups, 02, all that stuff. And I think quite watchable. The football was very good. That was maybe the best balance. And then subsequently, not successful and not watchable. So Tommy, how will, as Irish people, how will we take to being very watchable and good football, but maybe not successful? Will we throw our arms in the air and say, well, we need to get more pragmatic? Or will we enjoy maybe being a kind of freewheeling, losing 4-3 Newcastle type team?
There's a lot of ifs in that question, Joe. I don't know where to go.
I can boil it down for you. My core point is I hope Stephen Kenny is given the time to try and play a good brand of football. And if we lose the first few matches 2-1 and 1-0, but we're showing signs of better football, I hope he won't be under massive pressure. We have to win the next game type territory.
Yeah. I'm disinclined to get too excited about how sexy our football is about to become.
Tommy, it's going to become off the chart sexy.
You reckon?
Well, I'm hoping.
Yeah, we're waiting for this generation of young talent to come through. I feel we're getting a little bit too excited about them. There's none of them, as far as I can see, at least not yet, going to be star players. They'll be doing well to be mid-rank Premier League players. If they actually come good on their talent and survive the desperate competition for places in a Premier League team, stay fit, progress technically and emotionally and physically, that quartet of players or more that they're talking about, 5 or 6 players, have a long way to go, even to become, I think, have stable mid-level careers in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And so I'm really cautious about all of that, and I'm not sure we will ever be faced with that dilemma of, well, at least we're playing attractive football, but we're not winning. I'm not sure how really cutting edge attractive it will be, and maybe we might be middling, success wise middling, and it's getting easier to qualify, as you know, especially for the European Championships too, and I don't know. I'm not being hugely optimistic about it, or no, I am being optimistic about it, but I think the jury's out on the talent, not just on Stephen Kenny. And actually, he's impressed me almost every time he speaks. I hear him talk about his intelligence and his independence of mind impresses me. But the material, ultimately, the material he has at his disposal, how good is it? How good will it be? I think we have a long road ahead.
No, we do. Somebody's texted in to make the point. Michael O'Neill, who did such a brilliant job up north, he won one game in his first 18 with Northern Ireland. And somebody else, Rory, cycling is the new golf. Middle-aged men spending thousands on the best bikes and gear to talk crap over coffee. So we'll see how Stephen Kenny goes. That's this Thursday, it all kicks off. The GAA split season, Conor, I know you wanted to talk about this, and it seems like we're headed there. I mean, the GPA have come out in favour of it. The general consensus around the country is this is the way to go. It's touched on in the papers in various quarters. Page 64 of the Mail on Sunday, the former president, Liam O'Neill, is being interviewed with Philip Lanigan. He's talking about this great opportunity to improve our games at the moment, this moment for change that the pandemic is providing us with. He says, for an organisation like the GAA, the people who stop change, the traditionalists, need to take a hard look at themselves and say, look at what you can do when you have to do it, as in under these pandemic conditions, he means. And he says, would I love to be the president taking the ball from where it is now for the next 3 years? The answer is yes, because the possibilities for change are boundless. Honest to God, there's never been as much opportunity for change. Colm O'Rourke is writing about the split season, for instance, and this is where really we're talking about the inter-county year being wrapped up by July and then the club game taken over. And Colm O'Rourke is saying the time is right to flip the season on its head. He says the GPA idea of having a dual season like this year has received a lot of praise, and while I don't like to change the habit of a lifetime by not going hard on the GPA, their suggestion has merit and deserves consideration. The idea is that most county activity would happen in the first part of the year, and from July or so on, the clubs would take over. All in the garden would be rosy then. He says it wouldn't be as simple as that. Having no big county games in the latter half of the year means a loss of prime viewing, both in Croke Park and on TV. But something has to give, and this year we're seeing a lot of brilliant competition in various counties, and the absence of county football and hurling has not hindered things at all. The reason is simple. The GAA is primarily a participation sport. Enjoyment is key, and without the lure of big money as a result of getting to the top, that is an advantage compared to professional sport. It's about the local community. Conor, come in this. You obviously cover Gaelic Games. You're invested in club. You're invested in the county. It definitely feels like this split season idea has a huge groundswell of support. The GPA are on board. The GAA are making positive noises. It seems like, you know, for an organisation that supposedly moves very slowly, we could out of nowhere suddenly be wrapping up our inter-county season in July territory and then no inter-county games until the new year. Thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think the prospect of a split season is too good not to happen now. I like the number of boxes that it ticks in terms of, fairness to club players, fairness to inter-county players who, do really suffer from having to serve several masters. And also with the escalating cost of the inter-county game, which is something that Shane McGrath touches on his column in the Mail as well. So there are a lot of reasons to back the split season, and I have to say, I think it's a really good idea. I think it's too sensible not to do and at least try out. Where my issue is with this is where we make the split. And it would seem that July and August are very big sacrifices to make for the inter-county game, to not have any inter-county in that period. And the reason has to do with sort of national coverage. There's talk of split in the newspapers here, and there's talk of the club game. But, I was at a brilliant game last night in Parnell Park, Kilmacud Crokes against St. Vincent's. And there were 2 semi-finals on in Mayo last night. The Waterford Senior Hurling final is on today. There's a couple of pieces about that today. But generally speaking, the club scene doesn't have the same impression on the Irish sporting landscape as the inter-county season does. And I'm all for doing the split, and I'm all, if people think that it's right to do it at that moment, give July and August to the clubs and run the club championship from there. I think that's fair enough. But I think they should know what it is that they're signing themselves up for. And when it comes, and there seems to be a perception out there that the club game in football and hurling will simply fill the void that's vacated in the sort of Irish sporting consciousness, if that's not too nonsensical a term, during that time. But it won't, because by its very, very nature, the club scene is parochial, and that is its strength. But when it comes to attracting big coverage, big sponsorship, even the sort of pieces that are around today about the Waterford final are nice features, but you don't have any analysis of games. And I think you need those kind of focal points, because there will be summers over the next few years where there will be no Olympics, no European Championships, no Rugby World Cup, no World Cup in soccer. And effectively, where the GAA would have had the monopoly on the coverage during those months, they won't have that anymore. And the club game obviously needs to be nurtured, and it needs to be treated an awful lot better than it has done in the past. But the intercounty game is where the GAA sells itself. And by sell itself, I don't mean in a monetary sense. I mean, when it comes to attracting the next wave of players, and it's a very, very powerful tool for that. So I just think that if people are all for this split season, and it seems to be that the majority of people now are, and vitally the people in Croke Park are now, and the GPA and the CPA seem to be pretty aligned on this, well then I think it's definitely worth trying out. But I think people need to not have this romanticised vision of what that's going to look like in those months. It won't be just a case that we'll all be walking around talking about I won't be down the shops talking to some guy about the Cork Hurling Championship or the Galway Football Championship, because people, it won't ever sort of command the national consciousness to the same level. Now, I'm led to believe that the TV figures for viewership have been pretty strong over the last few weeks. And last night in Parnell Park, I spoke to Dave Whelan, who's the man behind Dub Match Tracker, that provides a great service, giving updates on scores and results from club games in football and hurling all over Dublin. And he was saying the number of page impressions, or whatever metric they use to quantify traffic, was very high last weekend when the county quarterfinals of hurling were on, because they weren't televised. And we obviously have this new advent of matches being widely available on streaming. And it'll be really interesting to see ultimately what the uptake is there. But I suppose to wrap it all up in one single thing, it's that in a couple of months that are very, very vital, in Irish sport, I think people need to be aware that if the GAA don't have any inter-county games in those months, that the club won't simply fill that void, that it won't receive the same level of coverage or attention. Because there's a long way to go before they get to that point.
Tommy?
Conor, Joe, why is the assumption that the club game, that the county game would be played in spring and the club game in summer? Why not the other way around? That the club seasons are run off, say, between late February through March, April, May, and then you have the county June, July, August, September. And that way you'd still have the All-Ireland finals on their traditional September days. And also there's a part of the appeal of the county championships are that they're actually played in summer in the finest of weather. And it's not just because the players get, and in particular hurling gets to play in the best pitch conditions, but it's also part of the carnival for a kind of a nation of people, who get into their cars on hopefully, ideally, lovely Sunday mornings or Saturdays, and head off to the four corners of Ireland in glorious weather and a few beers afterwards, when it's still bright till 10 o'clock at night. That's a major part of the attraction of the county season in summer. And why not? Why is there an assumption that county will be played first in spring and then the clubs in summer?
It seems to be the working theory, Tommy. That seems to be the assumption I'd be a big believer that the inter-county season needed to be condensed anyway. Those pre-season games, the FBD and the O'Byrne Cup and the McKenna Cup, they don't really serve any particular purpose in the usual valuable time. Yeah, and similarly, I think, under the old system, we used to have 3 and 4 weeks between games for players, which was really unfair, and the ratio between training sessions and games for inter-county players was ridiculously skewed, and that wasn't good for players either. So it does need to be tightened up. Like, I would be all for starting the league off in February and running the inter-county championship, and maybe starting the club scene, in August. But look, there's another point to this, and again, like, not to try and burst anybody's bubble about this this new panacea for all things wrong in the GAA calendar, but a couple of years ago they opened up April for Club Month, and by last year very few counties were staging any significant club activity in Club Month. The All-Ireland finals were pushed back into the second week in August, which meant that the majority of counties were out of the championship by July, and yet very few counties actually got their club championships up and running by the middle of July, because club players go away for summer and there's all sorts of other complications. So again, like, just to sort of pour a dose of kind of reality on it, I'm not sure that if we have everything wrapped up by July, that the club championships are going to start in July, and that they're going to get that expansive sort of prime summer time to actually play those games. So again, I'd be careful that
Conor,
people know.
It still hasn't addressed the issue of why not play the county season in summer.
Oh well, I don't know. That seems to be the working theory. That's been the accepted order in every proposal that I've seen so far. So
okay, well, maybe it needs to be interrogated.
Yeah,
I'll make a few phone calls.
Well, I've been surprised at the lack of debate about it. That the GAA inter-county scene would be giving up its presence across July and August, and even a little, I mean, into late August. That is a big thing to give up. And
I agree.
And Tommy, your point about the rhythms of summer and going to matches and travelling up to Croke Park and how it's a part of summer life for all of us. Conor, am I right in saying you'd probably be in agreement? You think it's a dangerous is the wrong word to use, obviously, but we need to really tease out the reality of giving up July and pretty much all of August from an inter-county point of view.
Absolutely, and against that, like, the club scene has never been more watchable. I watched some of the game in Tyrone the other night, Trillick and Killyclocker, and as I said, the game in Parnell Park last night was brilliant. I saw the very start of the game in Mayo, the Briefy one as well, and they have a good, the club game now is a good product. The standards of everything has increased at the top level, athleticism, tactics. It is incredibly watchable, but it's too fractured and too parochial, I think, to command the same space. So that's, I suppose, what I'm warning here is that the assumption that will simply fill the same space and garner the same attention that the inter-county scene will, I don't think that's going to happen at all.
Well, even just looking at the media coverage, we've been doing the Sunday papers for how many weeks now, the GAA columnists don't write about the club game. I don't read any analysis of any trends we're seeing in club matches, tactically or otherwise. I don't read any pieces on any games. I mean, it's not grabbing the attention of the columnists, and I don't think people are talking about it anecdotally. I guess Colin O'Rourke's point is a fair one. He's saying that it's not really about that when it comes to GAA. It's primarily, he says, a participation sport. And the fact is, if people are playing it every weekend, it doesn't really matter if it's being talked about in the media Monday to Friday.
Yeah, well, again, I suppose what I'm saying then is if people understand that and people appreciate that and are willing to make that sacrifice, well then fine, go ahead and do it. But again, I'm in total agreement with Tommy. Like, the idea that you get to the end of July and there's no more trips to Thurles or watching the Sunday game in the pub at the start of August, like, that's, for a lot of people, defines what their summer is about. Like, a lot of people could measure their summers from, tell you what year it was by what GAA experience they had in those summers. And, it's a very significant cultural change, I think, to remove the inter-county games from those months. And I don't think that anybody is, has fully done the calculations as to the impact of that it could have negatively on the GAA.
That's the voice of Conor McKeon, who's obviously on the GAA beat with The Independent. We have Tommy Conlon from the Sunday Independent with us. Short ad break and then final few stories. Lots of interesting ones, be it Paul Kimmage on the Tour de France, Joe Brolly on his RTE dismissal, Stephen Jones on trans rugby players, and lots of coverage of Messi as well.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball. The Hard Shoulder with Kieran Cudahy.
Join me tomorrow from 4 o'clock for analysis and insights into the day's event and, of course, a bit of cracking controversy too.
The Hard Shoulder with Kieran Cuddihy.
With Nissan.
Tomorrow from 4.
On News Talk.
Great holidays are about memories made, not sun trips delayed. So this summer, plan a Dublin staycation at one of the Louis Fitzgerald hotels. Irish owned and family operated. The Arlington Hotel, located just off O'Connell Bridge in the heart of Dublin's city centre, is perfect for a city break. While the 4-star Louis Fitzgerald Hotel and Joel's restaurant just off the M50 and N7 is ideal for business and leisure trips. Make the most of your summer at the Louis Fitzgerald Hotels. Contact us directly for best available rates. Visit arlington.ie and louisfitzgeraldhotel.com.
We're all beginning to get back to business, so it's time to let customers know. An Post Commerce is here to help you get through. And nothing gets through to your customers like direct mail. We put your message directly into their hands and their homes, targeting key areas in your locality, delivered by a familiar face that you can trust. See how effective direct mail can be for your business at onpost.com/commerce. On Post Commerce, for your world. Terms and conditions apply.
At Specsavers, we're now open with 3 new ways to look after your sight and hearing. In store, where we're following all the recommended safety guidelines. At home, where you can get help via phone or video call from the comfort of your sofa, front room, or wherever you're most comfortable. Maybe not your bathtub though, for video calls? Not a good idea. Oh, and online, where you can order glasses and contact lenses straight to your door.
Specsavers, open with you in mind. Book an appointment online or call your nearest store.
When you find the right home, you want nothing to get in your way. That's why Lea Life offer mortgage protection in minutes, not weeks. Our fast, straightforward mortgage protection application process is the best way to keep your mortgage moving. No paperwork or medical, just a few simple questions and you're covered in an instant, starting at €2.33 per week. For mortgage protection that's streets ahead, visit lealife.ie or call 1890 907 100.
Insurance provided by iptiQ Life SA. Leia Healthcare Limited, trading as Leia Life and Leia Healthcare, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Want to advance your career in facilities management? Then talk to Portobello Institute. Choose an IWFM award or a BSc or MSc degree in facilities management and gain advance entry to year 2 or 3 with a trade cert or relevant qualifications and experience. Affordable and accessible online study and small group lectures are now enrolling. So talk to an expert about our IWFM degree and master's courses in facilities management at our virtual open sessions. Visit portobelloinstitute.com for details.
Join the switching revolution at Carphone Warehouse today. We've got exclusive deals you won't find anywhere else. Like, get the Samsung S10 for only $49.99 when you switch to a €40 a month plan with Vodafone. Carphone Warehouse, for the best deals on your mobile, TV and broadband. Offer subject to availability and 24-month contract.
Check this out. Super Value are cutting their prices again. Super Value fresh Irish whole chicken 1.9 kg was $5.69, now $4.75. Super Value organic carrot 750 gram was $1.59, now 99 cent. Check out Super Value's fresh price cuts for yourself. It's got to be Super Value.
Kickstart your morning with Nespresso coffee machines at great prices from Harvey Norman. Like the Nespresso Virtuo Next coffee machine, now just €99, saving €69. Or get the Nespresso Virtuo Next coffee machine with Aerochino, now only €169. And for a limited time only, claim 50 free Nespresso coffee capsules plus a free coffee subscription when you purchase any Nespresso Virtuo coffee machine from Harvey Norman. Shop online today or safely in our spacious stores. Harvey Norman, your home appliance specialists.
Go! The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Welcome back. Tommy Conlon and Conor McKeon with us. We're going to race through a couple of stories here as ever where the clock is suddenly fighting hard against us. Paul Kimmage, page 5, day 2 of the Tour de France, page 5 of the Sunday Independent. Remco looked like the new hero of professional cycling, but there are familiar warning signs. It's a very interesting piece. I haven't seen this anywhere else. So Remco is his first name. Evenepoel is his second name. 20 years of age, apparently the next big thing in cycling. 6 months ago, Paul Kimmage went to watch him cycle in the Algarve and thought afterwards, wow, this guy could be anything. He says, well, that and the usual thought of, can we believe him? And then a week later, he picked up, well, COVID kicked in, and then post-COVID, he won in Spain and Poland. He's made it 4 wins from 4 for the year. But 2 weeks ago, he was in Bergamo for the Tour of Lombardy, and he suffered a crash, and an interesting thing happened. So he missed a corner on the descent, he hit a bridge, he was tipped into a ravine, shattered his hip, and 2 days later, smiling for the cameras from a hospital bed in Belgium, writes Paul. But a few days after that, a more disturbing clip was posted online from the crash. Remco was lying in the ravine being attended to by some medics when his team director appears to reach down and remove something from his jersey pocket. Why was it disturbing, asks Paul Kimmage. Because when the clip went viral and Bramati, that's the team director, was asked to explain it, he couldn't remember what it was. Why is that disturbing? And Paul says, because it rang a couple of bells. And picked out a moment where, when a cyclist had passed away a number of years ago, his widow was given the instructions to gather every vial and pill you can find in the house and put them in a bag. That's how these guys do business, says Paul. There were no pills or vials removed from Remco's pocket, just a small bottle containing nutrition products, the team said in a statement yesterday. But now it turns out the world governing body have decided to investigate. So Paul says, instead of tuning into the tour yesterday afternoon, I was reminded from a line in Rodham and turned it off. This is a book about Hillary Clinton, a fictional book, as if she had left Bill, what would have happened. And Hillary in that says, you know, if you're trying to humiliate me, I am ashamed of myself, but not for thinking you'd find me attractive. I'm ashamed because you've given me so much evidence for so many years about what a piece of SH1T you are, and once again, I ignored it. I've seen, by the way, that Bramati, the team director, has come out to say it was nothing illicit, what he took from the cyclist. I don't understand how one could even think that. I remember very well that there were frantic moments and there was a need to remove things that were on Remco's back, because shortly afterwards he would have to lie in a stretcher. So I took away his radio, gel, bar and the jar of sugars, and in order not to leave them on the ground, I put them in my pocket. There's another photo in which you can see his helmet has been taken off. That's it. I suppose, Tommy, it's a really interesting piece. We're at this weird point with the Tour de France, more than a lot of sports, I think. We're like waiting for the all clear almost. Can we go back and enjoy this? Like, can someone give us the thumbs up that this is not even totally clean? You know, I don't think any sport is or will ever be totally clean, but just that, you know, the top 30 guys aren't just taking the mick completely. And based on Paul Kimmage's piece, we're still in that holding pattern.
Yeah, Paul, as we know, has campaigned and written for so long about pro cycling and all its problems. Maybe to the extent that we forget, actually, Paul is in the long line of, or rather short line of Irish whistleblowers, and you know, we've had a few of them in business and finance, not many, in the Garda Síochána industry, just that small band of people who break the omerta. And it shouldn't be forgotten that Kimmage essentially is a great journalist, as he is. He started out certainly as a whistleblower and took all the punishment that comes with that lonely role, the hostility and the rejection from your own people. Mind you, I'm impressed that he has found a new metaphor for his relationship with cycling, and the metaphor is Bill and Hillary. Yeah. And I assume that cycling is Bill, and Paul is Hillary, and Paul feels he's been let down a few times. That cycling as Bill hasn't always been fully faithful, it goes back to this idea of could Hillary ever trust Bill? Can Paul ever trust cycling? And it's, I guess it's much more personal for him because he is so wrapped up in his personal life, his family, his whole life story. For us as followers of sport, we can switch off from cycling. I switched off from cycling years ago, as I did from athletics, track and field. At least I have that choice. Disappointing as it is, but most of us can move on. If you grew up in the sport and competed in it, and it's wrapped up in all your family memories and your friends and family, it's much more agonizing, I would say, for someone like Paul, to have to deal with this constant sense, this unnerving, debilitating sense that am I constantly being let down by the sport I love? And this is the latest example of it. The evidence, mind you, in this Belgian cyclist, there's not very much. I mean, the manager has picked up that bottle of whatever nutrition products from the cyclist person, and that's about it. But I guess it's enough for someone like Paul Kimmage to go, well, we have a superstar here, possibly the new Eddie Merckx, and wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if we could believe in him?
Yeah, well, we'll see how the investigation pans out. I suspect it's the first time he's been likened to Hillary Clinton, Paul Kimmage. Above that, Conor, RTE's McBennett didn't like me from the start. This is Joe Brolly. Obsession with banal statistics revealed in WhatsApp postings. Declan McBennett, the head of RTE Sports, spoke about Brolly's, sacking, I suppose, with the Irish Independent yesterday. So Joe Brolly's written a response. Based on this, I wouldn't think a truce is about to be agreed anytime soon.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be kind of drawn by this story, as much as we all sort of throw our eyes up to heaven and sort of feign.
Well, I'd say you threw your eyes up to heaven, and then it was probably the first thing you read.
Was it the first thing I read? It was the first thing I read, actually, this morning, yeah. No, I've read this already. I was interested to read Declan McBennett's interview with Vincent on Saturday. It was a very good piece, and you knew the question was coming. And the reason that he gave for sacking Joe Brolly, and we can say sack because Joe Brolly uses it himself. The pull quote on his column is, "I have no problem with being sacked." But Declan McBennett said the three reasons why you get to be a pundit are credibility, informed opinion, and the ability to articulate that opinion. And if you're a pundit and your contract gets cancelled, you have to ask why. And if you examine those elements already mentioned, it probably answers that question for everybody. I don't think Joe really lacks the ability to articulate an opinion. I would say he's probably one of the foremost practitioners of that in the country. And I think his opinion is quite informed as well. As an aside, and not to get away from Joe's column, I was really interested to hear Declan McBennett tell Vincent on Saturday that he thinks Roy Keane would make a good pundit. Despite the fact that, to my mind anyway, he displays an awful lot of the same tendencies as Joe Brolly. Like seems to be a performative aspect to it, and this kind of almost contrived outrage, and kind of a lot of personality-based punditry. Whereas I suppose what Joe says in his column today was that Declan McBennett was sort of obsessed with statistics. And we read this before, where there was a WhatsApp group created of which all the pundits were members, and there was a statistician who was kind of constantly uploading statistics from games into this, and they were told to use this to, I suppose, buttress whatever piece of analysis that they're putting together. But I suppose Joe Brolly's contention in his article today was that, in fact, he says early on in his tenure, I got a phone call from one of the Sunday game producers. He says, "I'm just letting you know, Joe, McBennett is gunning for you." And then he sort of describes the events that kind of led to his sacking. The reason that he was giving was that he said to Pat Spillane during the live broadcast of the drawn All-Ireland football final, "Would you stop patting my arm?" And he was told that this was unprofessional and unforgivable. So it seems like it was a very quick disintegration of a relationship that wasn't on a particularly stable footing to begin with.
Yeah.
I have to say personally, like Joe Brolly as a pundit, there are times when you kind of watch it and you say, well, hang on, you said the opposite last week, and the inconsistencies of his punditry are kind of to get to you. But he's very entertaining, and he's very, very articulate as well.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that the Sunday game is sort of better for his absence, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah. Well, it's on page 5 there, so it's similar to the interviews he gave about all this a couple of months ago. Tommy, I know you picked out some Messi coverage. It will now be quite dated because La Liga have just issued a ruling. And so this notion of Messi's that his 10th of July deadline to send that fax about wanting to leave could be extended given the COVID situation in his eyes to the end of this season. La Liga have ruled that that is wrong and that the 10th of June was the 10th of June. And so if Manchester City or anybody want to buy Messi now, well, then they can pay 700 million. So he won't be going for free now unless he kicks up such a fuss at Barcelona, and he hasn't turned up for training this morning, that they negotiate some kind of situation where he says, well, look, I'm effectively going on strike, let me out of here. But certainly based on that La Liga ruling, you're going to have to pay something for Messi, that's for sure. You're not getting him for free now. That's the latest news from La Liga.
It's very interesting. As soon as you told me that, the cogs were going off in my head. What wheels within wheels brought La Liga to make that ruling? I mean, what politics are going on there? And you'd be talking serious politics. I mean, what connections are there, if any, between the Barcelona president, who is at loggerheads with Messi over this, and the senior governors at La Liga? Are La Liga looking at this? We are not prepared to lose one of the greatest players that ever played in our league, in our country. That alone, that La Liga ruling?
Yeah.
I can't even conceive that it was issued strictly on legal advice with no other issues factored into it at all. That was again the complexity of it. It's almost like it's almost like a power struggle for the kingship of a country. It's just like the power struggles at the court of the king and who is going to rule, and the complexities, the scale of it, what's at stake, the money, the reputation of an institution of Barcelona and La Liga. And what's become apparent, or has struck me about it, is that Lionel Messi, for all his discretion, privacy, quietness as a sportsman, that his greatness is inherently political. That greatness on his scale becomes political in the dressing room, and not just. And you'd expect that in a dressing room where a major personality or major player will always wield influence, no matter how humble or discreet they are, just by being who they are. That is enough to have a manager treat you differently. That's in the dressing room. But we're talking here now the boardroom of a major institution in European sport and world sport, Barcelona. The boardroom is rattled and frightened and confused, I would imagine, by this Lionel Messi situation. His greatness, the scale of his reputation in the world, among the fans, that alone has really sent shockwaves and tremors into the Barcelona boardroom, into Barcelona, the city. And as we're hearing now with La Liga, and the tremors are reaching the Premier League, specifically through Manchester City. And it's a fascinating, for me, or one of the interesting things about it is that it is sporting greatness made, it is political power made manifest from sporting greatness mutating into massive political power.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to me.
Yeah, it sure is, and it's far from done yet. Fellas, we're out of time, and apologies, because I know there were other stories we wanted to get to. Conor, you wanted to touch on the Sliotar distance piece that Dennis Walsh had written, and Stephen Jones on trans rugby players and how trans women, he expects, and regretfully but rightfully, he says, won't be able to play when World Rugby have to rule on the issue. We won't quite have time to get into all that, but my thanks to you both for being with us on the show. Tommy Conlon from the Sunday Independent, Conor McKeon covers GAA for the Independent as well. Thanks very much, fellas. Much obliged.
Joe.
There, Joe.
Off the Ball on News Talk